What's up, YouTube? Corolla XRS. And I'm going to drive and do a few thoughts here, and I am not using a head mount, so this is another poorly produced video, and perhaps you'll be interested in some thoughts on this car. I'll do a few more pulls. Again, I don't have my mount on right now, but honestly it would be up here and it would be kind of harder to see anyway, so I thought it would be neat to just get a little bit of just conversation. I've had this car about 2 weeks now, and been actually I haven't driven much, I put about 350 miles on it, but I will just do a few pulls here. Can't get too fast on this road. However, we know what the people want. The people want lift. Here we go. Just going from second to fifth. So the car is stock at this point. I wanted to get a kind of a baseline for just a POV drive with sound, because I actually have a MagnaFlow exhaust, which I'm going to be installing soon. And I'm also getting a reflash. So I'll talk about those things, and I've done a bunch of other little things with the car. At this point, it's just a K&N filter, and everything else is stock, panel filter, that is. But a few thoughts about the car. I got a whole bunch of different ideas here, so let me just rattle them off. First of all, the mod's coming, the MagnaFlow exhaust. Wasn't going to do an exhaust. Don't want the car real loud, but I was reading about the MagnaFlow, and they're not crazy expensive. I found some discounted several $100s. It's a catback, so it's about half the exhaust. And I thought what I read about the MagnaFlow was that it sounded like a factory performance exhaust, kind of like the way a TRD exhaust would sound, and I really like that sound. It adds some sound without getting crazy. Just enough for you to know there's something there, but not crazy and obnoxious. So I sprung for one of those. So like I said, that's coming, that's on the way. And also talking about the reflashes. If you're new to that idea, basically a reflash is where you get a ECU, yours or another, and you have it a new map put on it, which changes possibly timing, different air fuel ratios, all kinds of different things, throttle response. In this particular car, it also changes redline and lift point. So I sprung for, there's 3 guys out there that I read about that were available, that were offering reflashes. One is a fella named Ronnie in Hawaii, and he is cheap. He was only $100 for the reflash. Send him the ECU and get your own back, get it back. From what I read early on, there were some things I just didn't feel like that was for me. And then the other fella's name, I believe, is Mark or Matt actually, and he's with Monkey Wrench Racing. He has the 5750 lift point. But I read about that one, and I just wasn't really happy. Do another pull here. So, and the reason was because everything I read, people were saying if you set the lift point to really low, like 5750 or 58, the car kind of bogs. Right now, as you can see, it pulls pretty hard when it hits lift at 6800 from the factory, and Toyota tuned it that way for a reason. So the folks, I read a bunch, watched some YouTube videos, read a little bit on Reddit, just read on Toyota Nation, and found a good bit of info where people had pretty much said, they just weren't real happy. They were happy with it because it lowered lift, and then they could stay in lift when they did the 1 to 2 shift. But at the end of the day, it just didn't kick nearly as hard. So I talked to that fella, Matt, on email, and I was like, hey, can you set the lift more like 6200? Because I don't have a lot of mods. And he's like, no, every reflash I do, they're all 5750. That's what you get. So I didn't think that was very cool, because Monkey Wrench is great. They offer all kinds of awesome stuff, but they're in a hurry. They don't have time to be playing around with different maps. I get it. They just have their one off the shelf canned tune. And so the third option was a fella, R9K race, R9K tuning, R9K racing, something like that. His name is Gustavo. He is in Puerto Rico, and and by the way, Monkey Wrench was around 250. Gustavo was around 220, so still, more money than the Roni fella. But I talked to Gustavo back and forth on email, and he was basically like, I'll customize your lift point for whatever your mods are, and he's like, this is why you don't want it at 58. It's not going to feel right. You want it about 62. So I liked that, and I found a great deal on an extra ECU for a Matrix XRS, which will fit this car just fine. And he's going to do the reflash. I got it on the way back, or on the way to him right now. So future video we'll have that, and I'll have a spare, so I can go back and forth if I want, or if I sell the car. It's good to not have your only stock ECU rewritten. So those are some thoughts on that, some upcoming mods, and that's where I'm going to stop. I'm not going to go crazy with a header or pulleys or anything. I just, those are the basic things. Just want a little sound and just a little lower lift. I like the idea of it being lower, a little lower, having a little more of the power band. I'll do the first gear pull here. This is tough with only one hand. Yeah. Don't criticize my shifting. I'm driving with one hand. Woo-hoo! This car is fun. All right, let me get to that. Just a couple impressions from general driving. Again, I've driven the car. I put about one tank through it of super. I got 26.1 miles per gallon on my tank, a little bit over 300 miles on the tank. And it's a pretty small tank. I don't remember how big it was, but 26.1 was my MPGs, which isn't bad. I was hooning, like the way I'm driving now, I was pretty much hooning like on every drive, hitting lift, hitting red line, seeing what the car could do. And still, I got 26 MPGs. And by the way, that was with air on almost the entire time. So that's pretty good. Cost. So really interesting. These cars were like 17.8 brand new back in 05, which in today's dollars is about $26,700. So, comparably, if you said right now you can get a car that does 0 to 60 in a little over 7 seconds, it's a sleeper, it's got great suspension, it's economical, it fits 5 people, decent trunk, all the things a Corolla is, for $26,000, it would be comparable in the Fiesta ST range, the Civic Si range. I don't know what those, Fiesta ST, they don't make those anymore, obviously, but Civic Si, other entry-level sporty, compacts or hatches. So I think, for $27,000 of today's money, it's really not bad. Really not bad at all. And I thought that was interesting. And then the other thing I'll just mention, 2 other things here before I go away is, I mentioned in the last video, maybe it was my introduction, why how I drove several Civic SIs and just found like this car to be so much more interesting. I was pretty set on buying a Civic Si, a 6th or a 7th or an 8th gen. I was really looking at 6th and 8ths. But, I just decided after I drove one of these, I drove a Matrix XRS, and then I drove this, and this car is so much more interesting. No, it's not as sporty as the Civic Si. It does not have as good of a shifter. Does not have the notoriety, nor the fame, nor the tuning ability, nor the aftermarket support. None of that. But what it does have, it's just so unique. There's only, as I said earlier, 6,600 of these, and there aren't many on the road. No one knows what they are, and it's just a more interesting car to me. And lift hits so much harder than VTEC hits in the Civic. When you hit lift in this car, it's just with the Civic, it's just really very smooth changeover. And the red line's not as high. I think it's 8,000 or 80, somewhere in there, 78. I can't remember. But with this car, it's 82. Mine's about to be 85 with the reflash. And it's just more interesting, guys. It's just, I drove both cars. I wanted to like the Civic, and after driving this car, I was like, man, this is just so much more interesting. I like the way it drives. This motor is interesting. It kicks in. It's like around 4,000 RPM. You start getting a little pull, and that's kind of when there's something special in this motor. And then it, obviously at 6,800 in stock form is when lift kicks in, and then it, pulls really strong. So I just think it's a more interesting car. I think it drives, again, it doesn't have the sportiness, it doesn't have the shifter of the Civic, but it's just it's special in a different way. It's much more rare. And I'll close with this, really driving this car now for 1 tank of gas, again, 350 miles or so that I've put on it. The feeling you get, like, this is just a great daily driver. If you want a car that's interesting, that, no one's going to know what it is, which is fine. It looks just like all the other Corollas, except for a few little things. But if you want something that's just interesting, fun, the suspension is really good. It's a little lower than a regular Corolla. Of course, it has the engine, the 2ZZ GE engine. If you want something that's interesting, it's that car. It's just such a different, interesting car that is a lot of fun. And it's for that reason, aside from the other reasons I mentioned it, for me, it was just, it's the car I wanted over the Civic Si. So, that's a few pulls and just some thoughts on some upcoming modifications and, a little bit of a, 2-week review now of owning this car. Great car. I don't know how long I'm going to keep it. You can get one of these, as I've mentioned before. I've seen some earlier, this week for between $5,000 and $8,000, depending on condition. So, you can get a nice one for not too much if you can find it. And if you do, you need to jump on it because they go pretty quick. All right, those are my thoughts in just driving the Corolla XRS. Well, next video, I'm going to be talking about the exhaust. Probably I've done a bunch of new mods, also visual things, and a few repairs I'll be talking about. So that'll be coming up next. Thanks for watching. See you later. Peace.